All right, let's talk about how you can become a better public speaker. Whether you're an employee and you're looking for ways to improve your ability to communicate because you want a promotion at work or you want to be taken seriously in meetings, or you're someone who's currently in the speaking industry and you're just looking for ways to improve your skill so that you can stand out from the competition. I want you to stay and watch this video because I'm going to be sharing with you 3 tips to help you become a master communicator. Check it out. Hello, everybody. My name is Darryll Stinson. I'm a former Division I athlete and a 2-time TEDx speaker, and I love helping you improve your ability to communicate. Why? Because I believe that your pain is evidence of your purpose. And I had a lot of pain around public speaking. I hated the sound of my voice, so much so that I would mumble every time that I speak. I had terrible body language. I wasn't confident in myself. In fact, I struggled with depression because I didn't think that there was anything valuable about me. I would get so afraid to speak in public that I would literally leave the room during icebreakers and fake like I had to go to the bathroom so that they would skip me and I wouldn't have to speak in front of other people. That's where I started. And I tell you that because I want you to know that it doesn't matter where you start. All that matters is how you finish. And I'm sharing with you tips that have helped me go from being a super insecure speaker to being a successful speaker. And so watch this video because I'm going to share with you my best 3 tips on how you can become a better public speaker. All right, ready? Tip number 1. I want you to show up to give and not to get. Okay. Show up to give and not to get. You see, I didn't realize that a lot of the speaking insecurity that I had came from a place of deep insecurity and a need to get something from the audience. So I know that I was sharing my story because I wanted to be helpful, but deep down inside, I had a competing priority. I really wanted people to validate me. I really wanted people to like me. I wanted standing ovation. I wanted a line of people to come up to me after the speech and tell me how much it meant to them, tell me how much I made an impact in their lives. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that was my primary motivation. And I was trying to take from the audience rather than give to the audience. And it's a different energy level. And the way that that showed up is like, so if I made a mistake or I misspoke, I said something wrong, like I would get all in my head and then it would just get worse, so it wouldn't be something that I could just bounce back. Oh, PowerPoint didn't work and I'm getting back into my presentation, or, oh, I quoted the wrong scripture, or, oh, I, misquoted some person and said the wrong thing, or I forgot a portion of my speech. And then it's no big deal because I still have valuable, helpful information to say. No, to me, it was a big deal because now people would think less of me. And I was so worried about what people thought of me that I couldn't show up and serve them to the best of my ability, because you cannot give and get at the same time. Okay. And so when you show up to speak, your primary motivator should be to give, should be to be helpful. And I'll never forget, and I tell this story often, so I'm sorry if you heard it before, but it's a good story. I was pastoring a church in Saginaw, Michigan, and I was what you call a campus pastor, meaning that we would stream the main pastor via live stream into our service. He would preach the sermon, but me as the campus pastor, I would open and then I would close the service. Okay. And our main campus communicator, he was an amazing, master chef at communicating. And he knew how to preach. He knew how to have concise statements that people wanted to tweet. And I was just getting started. I didn't know I'd do none of that. In fact, people couldn't find a tweet in the middle of my messages. And I knew that. And that was the reality. And yeah, we're always our worst critics. But y'all, I'm telling you, you see the video, I was trash. And I would always suck the life out of the room when I would open and close. And so, like, not only were we watching the services through video, but then we had to deal with this person who was, hyping us up or trying to, like, end on a really high note. And I was just sucking the life out of the room in both occasions. And they were like, you just need to stop talking, let the video play. It's better. And I reached out to a guy by the name of Jonathan Joseph. Shout out to Jonathan. If you watch this, man, you changed my life. And I tell this story like everywhere I go. Jonathan Josephs was the campus pastor for Stephen Furtick's church. And I was like, I know he has to relate because Stephen Furtick is such a good communicator. And not that Jonathan was terrible, but he wasn't Stephen Furtick. You know what I mean? And so I was like, he's got to be able to relate. So I reached out to him and I said, man, he actually responded and we got on a phone call together. And I was like, man, how do you do it? Like, how do you follow such an amazing communicator? Like, have you ever felt insecure about it? Like, I was trying to ask him this question when I was saying, like, hey, man, I feel like Stephen Furtick's better than you. How do you handle that? Other people probably think that too. And so I just laid it out there. He said, I'll just quote him. He said, man, I used to struggle with that, Darryll. He said, but I realized that I was focusing on being impressive instead of being helpful. And when I showed up to be helpful, then it alleviated the pressure to be impressive. Because when I try to be impressive, that's like, I don't know if I can impress somebody or not. I don't know if I can, say something that somebody wants to repeat, or if they're going to shout like they do when Stephen Furtick preaches. But helpful, I can do. I can say something helpful. And when that became my focus and my motivation, then it alleviated this insecurity that I had. And so I share with you what he shared with me, that when you show up to be helpful, when you show up to give and not to get, it'll make it easier for you and you'll become a better communicator. Why? Because people love givers, and it'll keep you focused when you make mistakes. It'll remind you that that's your main motivator, is to be helpful to somebody else, and it'll help you come from much more of a pure place and ultimately make you a better communicator. All right. Number 2, I want you to listen more than you speak. Okay. It sounds corny, but we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. But a lot of times we go through life like we've got 2 mouths in 1 ear. I feel like that's a tweetable, right? So if you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, let me see you in the comments, say, I've got 2 ears. And the reason why God created us that way is because we're supposed to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Because the better I understand my audience, the better I can communicate with them. John Maxwell says, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And how do you show people you care? You listen to them. You ever have somebody listen to you and you just felt like really connected to that person because you felt heard? Well, that's what you can do as a public speaker. And I'm not just talking about while you're public speaking. I'm actually talking about in preparation for your speaking opportunities. Again, whether that's at work, like you want people to know how much you care. So I want you to spend some time talking to your audience, asking them how they're doing, figuring out what's going on in their life, and like make it your objective to become a better listener. I'll tell you one strategy that helped me to become a much, much better listener, because I think we all think like, hey, yeah, I'm pretty good at listening, and we really don't know. I went to this leadership experience called Leadership. Shout out to Leadership. If you've ever been to Leadership or connected to them or know about them, let me know in the comments. So I went to this experience called Leadership. It was a week-long experience where I was a chaperone or a supervisor. It's cluster facilitator was the actual name. And I had to, oversee and lead a group of students who was going through this deep leadership experience. Okay. And as you know, with leadership, a lot of times when you're leading others, you're learning in the process as well. And so while I'm there, they had us do this active listening exercise where literally you had a spotlight, and while the other person was talking, the spotlight was on them. And if you ever talked or asked a clarifying question or wanted to chime in and say something, then the spotlight would turn on you. And I remember doing this exercise and listening to this person, and I'm competitive, so I didn't want to ever have the spotlight turn on me, because that's the goal of the exercise, is to keep the spotlight on the other person. And I was shocked at how many times I had to bite my tongue and control myself to continue to keep the spotlight on them. And what that did for me was I had to listen more attentively, if that's the word, more actively. And I learned that when I did that, that oftentimes me interrupting or interjecting or clarifying often ruined that person's train of thought. And I was missing out on the value of understanding them, because I was directing the conversation. I was worried about my objective rather than being fully present and just letting them get what's off their chest. Try it out. Try it out. It helped me. Do the spotlight example, right? Just you don't have to have like a literal light, because it's kind of weird, but just visually like picture that in your mind, that when you're talking to someone, picture the spotlight shining on them and make it your objective to keep it on them as long as possible, and watch how much you learn. And when you learn more about your audience, you will become a more effective communicator because you will get up there and say things that you can only say by knowing them really, really, really well. So think about that. Think about some of your favorite speakers. Don't you feel like they read your mail? They've been in your email, like they had a secret hidden camera in your house because they just know what you're going through, or they know exactly what you need to hear. It's because they're great listeners as well as great communicators. So that's what I want you to do is I want you to listen more than you speak. So number one, I want you to show up to give more than you get. Number two, I want you to listen more than you speak. And number three, I want you to be yourself. Yes, be you. You know, it's a good quote. They say, never try to be a cheap copy of a great original. And everyone quotes it and everyone knows it and everyone thinks they're not being a copy, but Darryll Stinson was being a copy. I loved watching communicators. In fact, I did a video called 3 Ways to Know That You're Called to Speak. And one of the ways that you're called to speak is if you're just fascinated by other speakers, because you're fascinated by it because you're called to become it. And that's what I was. And because I was fascinated by these speakers, I was an imitator and I tried to be exactly like them when I got up there to speak, even though I wasn't like really trying to. It was just, I watched them so much and I adored them so much that it was like my natural nature to just like mimic their behaviors, their speech, like, and there's nothing wrong with like learning from other communicators, but there is something wrong with valuing someone else more than you value yourself. Okay. Like you don't have to think like less of you in order to think more of others, right? You can think highly of yourself and think highly of others, but that's not how I function. I thought very highly of other people and I thought less of myself. I was like, they're amazing, I'm not. And I was so focused on comparison that I could not find my uniqueness. And so I had to learn that Darryll, like the world already has a TD Jakes, the world already has a Pastor Travis, the world already has a Tony Robbins, the world already has a Brene Brown, the world already has a Michelle Obama. The world doesn't need another one of them. The world needs you. Your voice matters. Your communication style is unique. And I had to start like learning how to be myself while I was public speaking. So how did I do that? I might have to do a whole video training on how to be yourself as a public speaker, like how to find your authentic voice and your unique style. If you want me to do a video on how to find your authentic voice and your authentic style, then drop me a comments, let me know. If I get some engagement, I'll do it, because I want to create content that's helpful, not just something that I think is good in my head. Okay, so you got to let me know. This is a dialogue, not a monologue. Okay, so here's something that I did. Okay, I started to observe myself when I spoke. So I would watch film or listen to a video record or audio recording, and then I would highlight moments where I knew that I felt like I wasn't being authentic. Like maybe from a preaching standpoint, if I like opened up and I felt like, something Bishop Jakes used to always do, and he's the best at it, is he would read scripture. When he would read that opening scripture, like it was like a scene out of a movie, and then God said, let there be good God. I mean, he almost gonna preach the opening text. And so I was like, okay, this is how you're supposed to do it. But that's not really what I wanted to do, because I don't want to waste all my energy in the opening. And honestly, that's not how I naturally communicate. I'm more, you see how I am. I'm like, I'm real. So I was like, okay, how can I be more authentic? Okay, I gotta not do that. What would I actually want to do? Like if I wasn't on a stage and trying to mimic, what would I want to do? And I was like, I would just want to like chime in with something that happened this week, because I'm more relational, I guess. Like I'm not a master at every in and out of the Bible. So what I did was this. So I would start out some sermons like this, rather than like turn to John chapter 3 and in the beginning was the word. Rather than doing that, I would say, man, I was struggling, feeling like I wasn't enough this week. And not to get into gory details, but me and my wife had, a little conflict resolution this week. And I started to think, where's God in this? And God spoke this scripture to my heart and he said, go to John chapter 3. And so I would lead in that way. And it was way more relational, which is how I like to communicate, than what I thought I had to be. You know what I mean? Another example that's not a church example is like Eric Thomas is another one of my favorite speakers. And like many other people, some say he's the number one motivational speaker in the world. Well, he's got this thing where he yells like the entire speech, like the entire speech. I don't think I ever seen Eric Thomas cry in a speech. I'm not saying he hasn't. He probably has. I only see what, is available online. And I've saw him in person several times. In fact, I was part of a speaker program for a while. And he's always, if you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you be successful. You don't want it bad enough. You don't want it. Like, he's always doing that stuff. And I'm like, man, I got to do that. If I want to motivate people, I got to, And don't get me wrong, I play football, so I like to get hyped. So there is an authentic version of like, let's get it. Like, I like that. But it's that I thought that I had to be like that the entire time. So not only was I trying to open like Bishop T. Jakes, I was trying to yell like Eric Thomas. And I was like, okay, how do I naturally communicate? So I'm a hype person. I tell people I'm a win at all cost, accept your mental health type of guy. So what I would do is I would find ways to be more vulnerable, right? In fact, I want to do a video on how vulnerability can make you a master communicator. Would you be interested in that? Let me know in the comments, okay? Because I'll be having a lot of ideas. So I'm a real vulnerable person because I've been through a lot and I have like mental health battles and clinically depressed, all that stuff. And so I feel like people who are struggling with depression, their motivation and yelling that inspires them, that gets them out of their rut, but so does getting in the rut with them and letting them know that you know exactly how they feel. And so rather than just say, if you're down, man, you got to get up. You got to find that will to keep going because when it's the hardest, you're the closest to your breakthrough rather than like doing all that stuff. I would say, I know what it's like. I know what it's like to not even feel like you want to get out of the bed in the morning. I know what it's like to feel like everyone loves you for your gift, but no one loves you for you. And if you're there right now, I can relate. And I'm telling you that for every dark night, there's a brighter day. And I would say stuff like that. And that was just as effective. And it was more authentic. And I was learning to be myself. So those are just some ways I can do it. And again, I can do a whole separate like training series on that because that's so important. Because when you find your authentic voice and your style, it's freeing. You're better. You become one of one rather than one of many. And I want that for you because it has transformed my life. And it's what helps me get speaking engagements because I'm myself and people are like, hey, this is different. I want this guy to come in and talk. Okay. So if you found this video to be helpful, please make sure that you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Share this video with others. Help me get this message out there to more people who want to grow in their ability to communicate because the power of life and death is truly in our tongue. And when we learn how to communicate better, our world will change. Think about how much of our world is built around communication. Marriages succeed and fail around it. We pick our politicians because of their ability to communicate. We listen to the best advertisements because of how well they're communicated. We open the emails that are best written and have the best practice communications in it. Could have said that better. And we choose if we're going to continue to watch this video depending on how well Darryll communicates. So communication is important. And I know that you know that. And if you're looking for a community where you can grow, you can learn, you can get speaking leads, you can get speaking tips, join our private Facebook community, Speaking Made Profitable on Facebook. I'll put a link in the comments. And always remember that your voice matters, okay? That you can succeed at whatever you want to be, that we live in a world of abundance. There's more than enough love, peace, joy, money for all of us to have an abundance. Nobody has to live in lack unless they so desire. Okay. So if you believe that and you're with me, that's what this is about. That's my heart. That's why I share this content. All right. So I'm going to stop talking now. Let me know what you thought about this video. And remember, do all the stuff to engage and help it spread. Until next time, peace.